Detroit, Hitsville, a blind boy with a harmonica who could hear music in everything. You know his voice, you know the songs, but Stevie Wonder's story runs deeper than the records, stranger than the headlines, more complicated than genius usually gets credit for. 20 things most folks never knew, and that last one, well, it changes how you hear everything. Number 20, born 6 weeks premature in 1950. Stevie Wonder was born Stevlin Hardaway Judkins in Saginaw, Michigan, 6 weeks too early. The incubator they put him in pumped too much oxygen into his system, destroying the blood vessels in his eyes. That's what took his sight. Medical mistake that nobody talked about for years. His mother Lula never blamed the doctors publicly, but she knew. She raised him to hear the world instead of see it, to trust his ears above everything else. Sometimes what takes something away from you gives you something bigger in return. Number 19, he could play 4 instruments by 9. By age 9, Stevie had taught himself piano, harmonica, drums, and bass. Nobody showed him how. He'd sit with instruments and figure them out by touch and sound, spending hours working through the mechanics until his fingers knew what to do. His mother would hear him practicing late into the night, different instruments in different rooms. The harmonica became his favorite because he could carry it anywhere. Music wasn't something he learned, it was something he already knew. Number 18, discovered singing in a church choir. Ronnie White from the Miracles heard him singing at a church choir practice in Detroit. The kid was 11, standing in the back row, but his voice cut through everything else. White knew immediately that Berry Gordy needed to hear this. He brought Stevie to Motown the next week. Gordy listened to him play and sing for maybe 5 minutes before offering a contract. What mattered was that sound, that gift that couldn't be taught or copied. Number 17, Berry Gordy named him Little Stevie Wonder. Berry Gordy came up with the stage name because the kid seemed like a wonder, something you couldn't quite explain. Little Stevie Wonder. The little was marketing, making him seem even younger, more miraculous. Stevie hated it. He dropped the little by the mid-1960s as soon as he had enough say in the matter. By the time Uptight came out in 1965, he was just Stevie Wonder. Sometimes the names people give you stick until you're strong enough to change them. Number 16, first live album, at age 12. His breakthrough came with a live recording at the Regal Theater in Chicago when he was just 12. Recorded Little Stevie Wonder, the 12-year-old genius live in front of a crowd that didn't know what was about to hit them. Fingertips Part 2 from that album went to number 1. You can hear the audience losing their minds on the recording, screaming and stomping. A child playing like that, feeling the music like someone who'd lived 3 lifetimes. Number 15, Motown controlled everything he earned. Like most Motown artists, Stevie signed a contract that gave the label control of his earnings until he turned 21. They put his money in a trust he couldn't touch. Berry Gordy said it was to protect him. When he finally got access, he discovered he had about $1 million from years of hit records. Should have been 10 times that. The lesson stuck with him forever. Trust the music, but never trust the business without a lawyer. If you're liking these Stevie facts, subscribe. There are even bigger moments still coming. And let's continue, because in the next one, Motown thought his career might be over. Number 14, his voice changed and Motown panicked. When Stevie hit puberty, his voice dropped and Motown didn't know what to do with him. The cute kid act was over. For a couple years in his mid-teens, they barely released anything, just waiting to see if he'd still be marketable. But Stevie was writing and recording the whole time. teaching himself production, experimenting with synthesizers. By the time his voice settled, he wasn't just a performer anymore. He was an artist with something to say. Number 13. He fought for creative control at 21. When his Motown contract expired in 1971, Stevie refused to re-sign unless they gave him complete creative control, unprecedented for a black artist at that time. Berry Gordy tried to talk him out of it, but Stevie wouldn't budge. He recorded 2 albums on his own dime to prove he could do it: Music of My Mind and Talking Book.
Your love is driving me crazy, 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 girl. You are the sunshine of my life.
Those records changed everything, showed the world what happened when genius got to be free. Number 12. He played almost every instrument himself. On those classic albums from the 70s, Stevie played most instruments himself: piano, synthesizers, drums, harmonica, bass. He'd layer track after track, building entire songs alone in the studio, hearing in his head how everything should fit together. Engineers would watch him work and couldn't believe it. He'd play a drum part once, perfectly, then move to keys, then bass, never missing. The music existed complete in his mind before he ever touched an instrument. And just when it feels like nothing could slow him down, next is the moment it almost all got taken away. Number 11. Nearly died in a 1973 car crash. In August 1973, Stevie was in a serious car accident in North Carolina. A log fell off a truck and crashed through the windshield, hitting him in the head. He was in a coma for 4 days. Doctors weren't sure he'd make it. When he woke up, he'd suffered a partial loss of smell and temporary loss of taste from the head trauma. But his hearing was fine. His hands still worked, and that's all he needed. He was back in the studio within months. Number 10. Won Album of the Year 3 times straight. Between 1973 and 1996, Stevie won Album of the Year at the Grammys 3 times with 3 consecutive album releases: Inner Visions, Fulfillingness, First Finale, and Songs in the Key of Life. He's the only artist who's ever done that, winning with 3 albums in a row.
I'm too high, but ain't to the sky. Within, you begin smiling, laughter to tears.
Each album was different. Each one pushed boundaries. He wasn't just making hits. He was making history, documenting what it meant to be black and conscious and alive in America during the 70s. Number 9. Superstition was written for Jeff Beck. Stevie originally wrote Superstition for guitarist Jeff Beck as a thank you for letting him use Beck's studio. But when Motown heard it, they insisted Stevie release it himself. Beck was supposed to put it out first, but Motown rushed Stevie's version to radio. Beck was upset, but he understood. The song became one of Stevie's biggest hits, that clavinet riff instantly recognizable. Sometimes the songs you write for other people end up being the ones you were meant to keep. Number 8. He helped create Martin Luther King Day. Stevie campaigned hard for Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday to become a national holiday. He released Happy Birthday in 1980 specifically to push for it, performed at rallies, lobbied Congress, used his fame as leverage. It took years, but in 1983, President Reagan finally signed it into law. Stevie performed at the bill signing. He turned his music into political action, proved that artists could change more than just the charts. Number 7. Turned down $1 million apartheid offer. In the 1980s, Stevie was offered a substantial sum to perform at Sun City in apartheid South Africa. He refused without hesitation, wouldn't even consider it. The money meant nothing compared to the principle. He was one of the first major artists to take a public stand, and it started a movement. Other musicians followed his lead, sometimes saying no costs you money, but earns you respect that money can't buy. Number 6. His biggest hit got banned in South Africa. South Africa banned I Just Called to Say I Love You after Stevie dedicated his 1985 Oscar for the song to Nelson Mandela. The apartheid government called it subversive. Radio stations stopped playing all his music.
To say I love you.
Stevie didn't care. He kept speaking out, kept dedicating performances to freedom fighters, kept using his platform. The band just proved he was saying something that needed to be said. But the next one isn't about politics or protest. It's about the messy private life behind the legend. Number 5, he has 9 children with 5 women. Stevie has 9 children with 5 different women. A complicated personal life he's kept mostly private. He's been married 3 times, but his relationships with his children's mothers vary. Some are close, some are distant. He's written songs about fatherhood, about love, about regret. The personal life of a genius is rarely simple. The music comes from somewhere real, from joy and pain all mixed together. Number 4, won 25 Grammy Awards total. 25 Grammys over his career, one of the most awarded artists in history. But he never seemed to care much about the trophies. The awards were nice, but they weren't why he made music. He made music because he had to, because it was how he understood the world. The recognition came because people heard that truth and felt it. Sometimes the greatest artists are the ones least impressed by their own greatness. Number 3, his hearing was extraordinarily precise. Stevie developed an extraordinary ability to hear details most people miss. He learned to navigate the world through sound, picking up on subtleties that sighted people rarely notice. Every frequency, every rhythm, every tiny shift in tone registered. Studio engineers talk about how he'd catch mistakes in a mix that nobody else heard, some tiny frequency imbalance buried deep in the track. His ears didn't just hear music, they heard everything, processed sound in ways that shaped his entire genius. Number 2, Paul McCartney called him for ebony and ivory. When Paul McCartney wanted to make a statement about racial harmony, he called Stevie first. Ebony and Ivory became a massive hit in 1982, but more than that, it was 2 of the biggest artists in the world saying something that needed saying. The song was simple, almost too simple, but that was the point. Sometimes the most important messages don't need complicated delivery. McCartney knew that if anyone could help him say it right, it was Stevie. Number 1, he composed complete songs in his head. Stevie works entirely by ear and memory. Everything exists in his head, completely formed before he ever enters a studio. Full arrangements, all the parts, harmonies, rhythms, everything mapped out in his mind with perfect clarity. He'd walk into a session and play a song start to finish, all the instruments, exactly how it should sound. Engineers would scramble to keep up, trying to capture what was flowing out of him. The music wasn't written down on paper. It was already alive in his head, just waiting to be released. That's why his music feels the way it does. It came from somewhere deeper, somewhere most people never access. Stevie Wonder proved that genius doesn't need to see. It just needs to listen. These stories don't make it into the legend often enough. The struggles, the choices, the moments that shaped the man behind the music. But they're what made Stevie Wonder real. If this brought something back, Tap like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And when you're ready, click the next video on screen. We're diving into a set of classic soul and smooth R&B tracks that only people who grew up in that era really remember. Until then, keep listening,